You wake up. The ground beneath you is frozen solid. Not cold, frozen. The kind of cold that gets inside your joints before your eyes are even open. The sky above you is a shade of gray you've never seen before. Not overcast, not cloudy, but thick. Permanent. Like the sun is behind something that has no intention of moving. You're wearing whatever you fell asleep in. There is no road, no sound of traffic, no hum of anything electrical anywhere. Just wind and somewhere far to your left, something large moving through snow you can't see the bottom of. You have no fire, no shelter, no weapon. The temperature is minus 30 degrees Celsius. In 6 hours, it will drop further. In 12, if you haven't found warmth, your body will begin shutting down its own extremities to protect your core. Your fingers go first, then your toes. Then your mind starts making decisions that feel completely reasonable and will absolutely kill you. You have approximately 90 minutes before any of that becomes irreversible, so what do you actually do? Here's the uncomfortable answer. You probably don't know. Not because you're personally unprepared, because the knowledge required to survive the Ice Age was so specific, so hard-won, and so completely useless in the modern world that it stopped being passed down generations ago. Let's start with what you're actually walking into. 20,000 years ago, at the peak of the last glacial maximum, ice sheets buried Canada, Scandinavia, and most of northern Europe. Average winter temperatures across Central Europe held at minus 15 to minus 20 degrees Celsius, not a cold snap. A season, every year for thousands of years. Across that frozen landscape moved animals that have no living equivalent. Woolly mammoths in herds large enough to shake the ground. Cave lions, 25% larger than any African lion alive today. Cave bears weighing 500 kilograms, competing directly with humans for sheltered spaces. Woolly rhinoceroses. Steppe bison with horn spans wider than a man is tall. This is the world you just woke up in. Your first problem isn't any of them. Your first problem is your skin. The human body loses core temperature rapidly in air below 10 degrees Celsius without insulation. At minus 30, that process is fast and unforgiving. Shivering begins within minutes, your muscles contracting involuntarily, burning energy you cannot replace. Blood vessels constrict, pulling circulation away from your extremities and concentrating it around your vital organs. Within 30 minutes, your fine motor control begins failing. You can't tie a knot, you can't grip a branch, you can't perform the precise physical tasks that survival demands. Within 2 hours, hypothermia sets in. Your thinking slows. You feel paradoxically warm. Some victims in their final stages remove their own clothing because their nervous system has begun misfiring. Researchers call it paradoxical undressing. It is almost always fatal. The people who lived through Ice Age winters knew all of this. Not from textbooks, from watching others die. So what did they actually do? The answer starts with clothing. Not the rough animal skin most people picture. Actual engineered garments. Archaeologists excavating sites across Russia and the Czech Republic have found bone needles, hide-punching awls, and eyed needles fine enough to stitch watertight seams, dating back at least 30,000 years. At Sungir, a burial site near Vladimir in Russia, remains were found with thousands of tiny ivory beads still arranged along the seams and collars of garments long since rotted away. Tailored parkas, layered trousers, insulated boots. These weren't improvised. They were the product of generations of accumulated knowledge about which animals provided the warmest hide. How to tan leather so it stayed supple rather than cracking in the cold. And how to construct a seam that wine couldn't penetrate. You don't have that knowledge, you don't have the tools, and you don't have the years of practice it takes to produce any of it. Your second problem is fire, and this is harder than it sounds. Starting a fire in sub-zero temperatures with frozen materials using only what the landscape provides is a skill that takes years to develop. The bow drill method, the most documented technique of the period, requires a precisely carved hearthboard, a dry straight spindle, and a notch cut at exactly the right angle. In controlled conditions, a trained practitioner produces an ember in under 2 minutes. In a blizzard, half frozen, with materials gathered from snow-covered ground, that same practitioner might fail entirely. And producing fire is only half the problem. You have to maintain it. Ice Age shelters and rifle, some constructed from mammoth bones stacked as walls when timber was too scarce, were built around a central hearth that burned continuously. The fire wasn't an event, it was a living responsibility. Someone tended it at all times. Because a fire that dies in January in Central Europe 20,000 years ago is not an inconvenience. It's a death sentence. But here's what the research actually shows. And this is the part that changes everything. The people who survived the Ice Age didn't do it alone. In 2004, archaeologists excavating sites in the Swabian Jura region of Germany found evidence of groups of 20 to 30 people living and working in coordinated communities. Centralized food storage, clear division of labor. Some people made tools, others processed hides, others hunted, managed fire, raised children, tended the sick. No single person carried all the knowledge. The group carried it together. And that collective memory passed from elder to child across fire, in darkness, over hundreds of winters, was the actual survival mechanism, not strength, not speed, not individual toughness. Shared knowledge held inside a community was the thing that made winter survivable. A modern human dropped alone into that world has none of it. No community to plug into, no elder who knows where the herd moves in February, no one who has already learned at someone else's cost which mistakes you cannot afford to make twice. Here is the number researchers arrive at. A modern adult, physically fit, no preparation, no prior knowledge, dropped into Ice Age Europe in winter, likely survives between 12 and 48 hours. Death by exposure. Almost certainly before the second morning. And here is the thing that should stop you for a moment. The humans who did survive, who thrived across 15,000 years of glacial conditions, who painted the cave walls at Chauvet and Lascaux, who followed mammoth herds across frozen tundra for weeks, were biologically identical to you. Same brain, same body, same basic hardware running underneath everything. The difference was entirely in what they carried inside their heads. You live in a world that made that knowledge optional. The skills that kept every human alive for 300,000 years have been quietly replaced by systems so efficient and so invisible that most people go entire lifetimes without ever needing to think about them. That's not a failure, it's the point. The modern world is the most comfortable environment any human has ever inhabited. But what you gain in comfort, you give up in a kind of knowledge so old it doesn't have a name anymore. The people who woke up in the Ice Age every morning didn't wonder if they could handle it. That knowledge was already inside them, absorbed before they were old enough to question it, refined across a lifetime, passed forward before they died. We inherited their bodies, we didn't inherit what they knew.